I'm Katie White, and this is By the Book, Enhancing Relationships Through Literature. My mission here at By the Book is to connect you with books that foster personal growth and strengthen relationships with family and friends. I believe the best relationship advice is already out there, and I'm here to help you discover it. Today we have my friend Emily Udall. Emily served an 18-month mission in Washington State and was serving in my hometown when I came home from my mission in 2001. My parents had nothing but great things to say about her, and then we randomly ended up in the same YSA ward in Rexburg 2 years ago. She's currently a student at BYU Idaho, studying elementary education with a minor in teaching English as a second language, and graduates next fall. And she's excited to see what's next for her. So thank you so much for being here, Emily. I'm excited to hear about the book you chose to talk to us about.
Awesome. I'm excited to be here. I think this is a great book that everyone needs to read, so I'm excited to talk about it.
Excited to add it to the list. Yes. The list just keeps getting longer.
Yes,
and longer. There's so
sure.
many good books out there. Okay, so before we get into the meat of the podcast, I want to hear about a peach and a pit of your life recently. Okay. So a sweet part and a hard part.
Okay, a peach is that I've seen my family a lot recently, so that's been really fun. So my parents have come up to like Utah and Idaho, so that's just been really fun. And I got to, like, me and my sisters, like, we're planning to go on a sisters trip, so I'm just really excited for like all this time I get to spend with my family, like, in the next few weeks. So, that's been really fun. And a pit, my classes have been really not hard, but just like I'm only taking 4, but they're all like 3 credits, and I'm like, and they're all like 200 level courses, and I've been in school for a long time, so it's like I feel like I'm back at the start, and I'm like with all freshmen, which isn't a bad thing, but it's just like, oh, I feel like I'm back in my freshman year again. But it's been good. It's been good. Could be worse. So yeah.
Well, I'm glad that you're out there just getting it done. Mm-hmm. That's awesome. Yeah. Just to add to Emily's pit, she also hurt her leg, but also she's such a baddie because she's playing flag football. Yeah. But anyways, she's not gonna scar. She's been treating
that
it really
Neosporin
well.
Is going crazy.
Well, awesome. Well, let's get into the podcast then.
Okay.
Tell us what book you chose to talk to us about today and why.
Okay, so I chose the book For All Eternity by Dr. John L. Lund. He is also known as the communication doctor. And so this book is all about practical tools for strengthening your marriage, but I also think it's really helpful for just any relationship, because he talks a lot about just practical skills that you need to just make it effective communication. So
I love that. Yeah. So what do you know about Dr. John L. Lund?
Honestly, I know that he's written a lot of books. He's written another book that my mom read called How to Hug a Teenage Porcupine, and this book. And so my parents introduced me to the book.
Okay.
And they swear by this book. Like, this is a book that my parents get every person for their wedding. This is like a wedding gift in my family. Cute. And so it's like even for like cousins and people. So I honestly don't know a whole much about him, except that he's written this book and a bunch of other books, and they all have, he's a member of the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints, and he has, I believe he taught at University of Utah, and he's done a ton of research, specifically in communication. So I do know those few facts.
Very cool.
Yeah.
Very cool. All right, well, Emily's going to teach us about a main principle the book teaches, some of her main takeaways, and how that relates to relationships. So,
okay.
So
I have like 3 main principles I kind of wanted to talk about.
Perfect.
And the first one is, what is communication? So what do you feel like communication is like to you? What would you define it as?
I feel like kind of my first thought is that communication is like words, but I think taking another second to think about it, it also is like my facial expressions, my lack of like words, whether I'm like saying something or not saying something, my body language. It's just like whatever I do that communicates something, like a message to someone else, whether it be words or something else.
Okay, yeah, I love that. And that's he also talks about that in the book, and that's that's also part of what I want to talk about, how those 3 things that you kind of mentioned, those all go into communication.
Mm-hmm.
But one of the first sentences in the book is, he's like, I define communication as an exchange of understanding between 2 people.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm like, whoa. And when I first heard that, I said, that's awesome. And I think people our age especially, and he talks about this, how just because you're expressing how you're feeling doesn't mean that there's understanding on the other part or the other side. And when that understanding is lacking, it leads to failed expectations on your end. And that's where a lot of problems in, whether you're dating someone, whether you're married, the failed expectations because of the lack of understanding, that's kind of the core of what communication is.
That's so interesting. Just like the whole idea that you could be communicating, or you could be speaking, I guess, to someone, but the understanding isn't there, therefore the communication hasn't existed.
Yeah.
But like, maybe I'm frustrated with you because you're not understanding what I'm saying, but I'm trying to express something.
Right.
I'm like, I've expressed it again and again and again, but she's not getting it.
Yeah.
But yeah, that's super interesting. I like that definition a lot.
And he talks about, so kind of a setup, he talks about how, especially in a marriage, obviously we know this, men and women, we communicate differently. That's totally fine. Men are monotaskers, women are multitaskers. And that's okay. He talks about how men being monotaskers, right, they can only focus on speaking, listening, or like thinking. Like when conversations are going on, they can only focus on one of those. Whereas women, we can focus on all 3, and we can also tune into other conversations. It's crazy.
It's a superpower.
It really is. I love people watching and eavesdropping in the crossroads. It's great.
Also overstimulating at times.
Yes. And so with that kind of setup, he talks about how that's what makes men such great protectors, is that they can monotask. And they see a problem and they fix it. Whereas women, we just need someone to listen. And so one of the skills is, he talks about how we need to become content communicators. And content communication, I think this is like one of the biggest things is content communicators is you hold yourself accountable to 100% of the words, and you hold the other person 100% accountable to their words. And so how you were saying the body language and the facial expressions, the words themselves, and what was it?
Maybe tone?
Yeah, I think it's in here. What is that? Anyways, I always forget the third one, and I'm like, I know that. That's not it. I swear I marked it. Anyways, tone of voice, facial expressions, and the actual words themselves. And so those all 3 things go into the communication, or like go into the understanding. But he did research, and he said that when you assume and when you put emphasis, when you put like when you heavy emphasize, I could say, I'm fine, or I could say, I'm fine, with a smile, right? Like one with a blank face or one with a smile, that is, you could get different things. But if I just say, is I hold myself accountable to just the words I'm saying, and you hold me accountable to the words that I'm saying, miscommunication only happens 3 out of 200 times. If you're just focused on the words themselves and holding yourselves accountable. And that's what content communication is.
Interesting.
Yeah. And it's very, very, that's a big part of it, but that's kind of the main idea. And so it's just so interesting to think that there's a quote, and he talks about how if we hold each other accountable to 100% of the words, imagine how much less tears and almost like emotional bloodshed could be lost if we just focus on the words, right? Now, if the words aren't kind, that's a different story.
Right.
But most of the time, because parents are busy, right? Like things just happen, right? We're busy, and things can get misinterpreted. But if you just focus on the words, that's okay.
Yeah. Just like what you're talking about with how like men and women communicate differently as well. It just like makes me think of like when there's like a dorm full of like girl roommates, right? And one of them goes on a date and they come back and they're like, okay, these are like the 10 words that he said to me, and then you spend the next like 3 hours trying to decipher like what it meant. Yes. Right?
Yes.
But it's like, okay, actually he's probably not thinking that deep about whatever he said, especially if it's like, you know, a first date or whatever. Right. And it's like we spent all this time, this like emotional bloodshed like you're talking about, trying to figure out like, oh, well, what did it mean? What was his facial expression? Like all these different things. And honestly, I think we start to like make things up in our mind that didn't actually really happen because we're trying to assign meaning to something that really probably wasn't that deep. So it's just, and I like what you're saying.
Yeah, and it's I agree with that. It's so true because we just, and I think it makes life just more joyful when we just can just kind of just let go and not dive deep into it.
Right.
If that, especially as a woman, it's just like, just let it go, right? Yeah. Not like just let it go, but like just have it. Yeah. Just take the words as they did, right? And don't like interpret it, you know?
Yeah.
I don't know. So.
Like he said he had a good time.
Yeah.
What does it mean? Like what does it mean? He just had a good time.
Yeah.
Like
and that's great. That's great. Get the win. Get the win, you know? And so one of the skills that he talks about, content communication, is so he talks about how we develop this, and at the end of every chapter or every like kind of like if you're listening to the tapes, he gives you like an invitation and a skill to develop the next week to like practice with someone or your spouse.
That's cool.
And so I really like how we develop content communication, and then going back to that exchange of understanding. So one is like you would come to your spouse with a problem and you speak and you say, hey, da-da-da-da, you know? And then what he would do is he listens and he reflects, and then he speaks his understanding. He says, okay, you said this, I understood this. And then you either confirm or deny that's what you were trying to get across. And as you develop that, and I think this is one thing, another thing is we should apply in our relationships is that this takes time. Content communication takes time. And it is okay. Because one thing that I've learned is I would rather take the time to have it be effective and have it be right than have the misunderstandings.
Right.
And I think that's one thing that people our age, we don't really get is sometimes we don't want to take the time. We just want to get it out. But I think as we take the time to have the speaker speak, the listener reflect, and like I almost said regurgitate. That is not the right word, but like reaffirm the understanding and the speaker confirms. I think there's a lot of power in that of taking that time to do those things.
I like that. It kind of reminds me of like what people will say about like your health. Like you either take time to take care of your health now, or your health will take your time from you in the future. And I think that's like the same kind of concept with this communication. Like either take the time to communicate properly now, or you're going to be standing in the yelling match for however many hours like later, you know? And so it's like, do you really rather like let's take 15 minutes now instead of losing our minds for hours, weeks, and maybe years depending on how poor this communication goes if it doesn't happen.
And he shares examples in the book about how he was talking, because I think he's also a therapist. That's another thing. He's like a relationship therapist. And so he talks about how there was this one couple and how, this is another thing about content communication. Do not hint drop. If you're hint dropping, that is dysfunctional. And he's like, he talks about how, he was like, my mom was the queen of hint dropping. And he was like, but if you are hint dropping, that needs to end today. And he's very, very strict about that because it's okay. And he also says, like, if you have to say it, it still counts. Or if you have to ask for it, it still counts. And he says, do not hint drop. And so I think hint dropping is, he shares an example of how this couple's driving home. And they've been married for 51 years. And she hint drops all the time. And how he says, like, they shared this experience of how she was like, oh, like, I'm thirsty. And the woman saw a 7-Eleven, and the woman just said, just because she was like, oh, I'm thirsty, she thought her husband driving was going to pull into the 7-Eleven and get her, you know, water, right? Mm-hmm. Which, if you're not going to ask, like, how could you just assume that's going to happen? Mm-hmm. But what he did is he said, oh, she's thirsty, I'm going to drive faster going home to get her some water. like in his mind, like, he's like, that's the solution. But in her mind, the solution was, oh, if he cares about me, he'll see the 7-Eleven and pull in and get me water or whatever, right? But I think that's just another thing that he talks about during content communication is do not hint drop. And I think that's one thing that I hope that people would apply is do not hint drop and have the exchange of understanding, you know? Yeah. So
that's powerful. It, like, makes me think about, like, okay, like, am I doing that? Because it drives me nuts when other people do it.
Yeah.
And, like, say we were in that same situation. You're like, oh, I'm thirsty, and I saw the 7-Eleven, and I'm like, oh, she probably wants me to go stop at the 7-Eleven and get her a drink. I'm not going to do that unless she asks me directly. That's, like, the thought that goes through my head of, like, I feel like often I'll be able to figure out what the person wants, but I'm not going to cater
to their needs.
Drop. Yeah. I'm like, if you can't ask me directly, I'm not doing that. Yeah. And that's probably a problem with myself, like a pride thing. And I probably need to communicate that I don't appreciate those hint drops in a kind way.
Yes.
But I'm sure I do it myself also. I'm sure I do. Mm-hmm. And that's something I need to make sure I'm aware of.
Yeah, but I also think that's great how you're not gonna, like, I think maybe in those times when people do, it's just like, okay, just turn to them and be like, what are you really asking?
Right.
Like, what are you really asking? Do you want to pull over, or, like, do you not? Because if not, like, no worries. But then I think we're like, oh, like, we're burdens or something. But it's just like, I don't know. I don't think that's prideful at all. But it's just like, yeah, like, just don't, like, because it's just not a healthy way of communicating. And so I think that's interesting how you recognize, and I'm sure we all do it. I'm sure we've all done it at some point.
Right.
Which is okay. But it's just like, especially in a marriage, if you hint drop, it just can cause a lot more problems, you know? So, but.
I love that. Definitely something to think about.
Yeah. Okay, let's see. And then, so content communication, that was a big one. Trying to think. And then I want to talk about apologies and forgiveness, but I want to talk about that last. Do you want to learn about love languages or conflict resolution?
Let's do conflict resolution.
Okay, awesome. So kind of like another lead up to this is the chapters before talking about the art of giving and receiving criticism and kind of like when conflicts do come up. Another thing that he mentions is we're all critical at some points in time, but if your nature is to be critical, he's like, once again, that needs to end today. And he gives challenges. This is another skill of you need to go 24 consecutive hours without being critical. And it's crazy. And I'm like, whoa. And if you are, you have to start the time over again. And it's crazy. And he asks, like, in the audiobook, he's like doing like a kind of like a TED Talk thing, and he asks, Kate, how many of you could you do it in one day? And only like 2 or 3 people raised their hands. And they were like, how many of you took it like 3 or 4 days? And more people raised their hands. And so it takes time to not do that.
Does he mean like being verbally critical?
I forgot.
Because that would be really hard to do, like to train your thoughts that quick.
Yeah. I forgot I can't remember. Because there was a rule on that. There was a rule on that. But I do think if it was expressed...
Okay.
I do think if it was expressed, that for sure that came over. But he talks about how... Anyways, he talks about skills in that. And then... But going off of that, okay, so now we see a problem here. How are we going to fix it? And he talks about... He talks about when he talks about this acronym, and it's BINGO. And so BINGO. And so B stands for be in emotional control. I stands for identify one issue. We can't be word vomiting like 7 things that we have to like fix right now.
I'm laughing because I've definitely done that before.
and it happens, and it's just like, and you're like, well, we're doing it right now. Because like you were saying, let's take the time now.
Mm-hmm.
But sometimes it's just like, sometimes we can't fix it all.
Right.
But that's, I don't know. I think sometimes we just think, oh, it all has to get fixed, right?
Mm.
But that's just how like we're wired. Sometimes we just see problems and we're just like, oh, okay, let's just like, you know, but
I think that could be another difference maybe between the male and female brain and how we process is like, okay, I see all these 10 different problems. Let me word vomit all of them to you at the same time.
Yeah.
But then if I'm talking to a guy and he's like, well, I really can only fix one thing at a time.
Right.
And he just gets overwhelmed to the point where he's not even really listening anymore.
Yeah.
And so I guess maybe that's something that I should practice with, like, just male friends, even just like, okay, like if I do have an issue, let's address it one thing at a time. Give him a few hours, days, a week or so
to process
that. And then we can have another short conversation of, okay, this is another issue, or like, hey, really great job on that last week, whatever it is. But anyways, I could definitely see that being a problem of like a woman trying to express everything and a man only really being able to focus on one thing at a time. So anyways.
Well, and this reminds me of another thing. When going into a conversation, men, I don't think he'll like, men won't admit this, but they want to know, how long is this going to take? Is this going to be painful? Yes. And what do you need from me outside of this after this conversation is done, what do you need me to do so I can fix it? Yeah. Give me a game plan. Yes. Yeah. Yes. And I think that honestly, like, coming up with, I really do, I think coming up with a game plan for both men and women, I think we both need it, but it looks very different. It looks very different. So, and then, so that's like identifying the one issue. N stands for negotiate. G is generate a solution. And O is obligate yourself with a good attitude. And I think when he talks about how when situations come up, as you're able to, especially be in emotional control, like if you cannot handle it, because then going back to content communication, if you are not in emotional control, it takes the message off of the words and puts it onto your emotion, which can be very hurtful if you aren't in emotional control. And he says, if you are not in emotional control, wait and be explicit and ask for your spouse to respect that boundary, or ask for your friend to respect that boundary, because if you aren't, that can lead to further problems.
Right.
Yeah. And so I also really like how I love how he says negotiating. I think the two biggest things for me, I really liked negotiating and obligating yourself with having a good attitude about it. So in the book, he talks about how him and his wife, they were planning a family vacation, and how he really wanted to go to, I think it was like the Bahamas, and she really wanted to go to Hawaii. And so, this isn't them. This is, which general? It was a general authority, and their solution was that they took separate trips. And that's just what they came up with. And I was just like, and it was just so funny when I was like, and he was like, and it was this general authority. I was like, wait, what? Like that was crazy. And so it just like, for me, I was just like, oh, even they like, even they have things that they negotiate about and that they have to process and things like that. And so I think the biggest thing with negotiating is, once again, taking the time to discuss it when you are in emotional control. And just be like, hey, like, these are my thoughts, and I want to do this because of this. Or, and then you would share, oh, great, like, these are my thoughts, and I want to do this because of this, right? And these are the reasons, and be like, is there a place where we can meet? You can't necessarily always meet in the middle, but try to... He talks about how we should be, like, not like give and pull, but just like try to come closer and closer together as you're working through the negotiation process.
Yeah. There's a thought that came to my mind when you said that, like, oh, they decided to take different trips.
Yeah.
I'm like, well, that sounds like a horrible idea. Like,
yeah.
But who am I to say? Because if their goal of this vacation was to just get to go see somewhere new that they really wanted to see, to get some time to just relax and whatever else, like, I guess it depends on what their goal was, right? Like, if their goal was, oh, we want to spend time together and get to know each other better and, like, if their goal was to be together, yeah, that's a poor solution.
Yeah.
But if their goal was, I want to go see somewhere I've never seen before, and they're both okay with that, then I think that's awesome. So I think part of the negotiation needs to be also, okay, what is our goal of this trip, of this whatever it is? And if we can agree on a goal, then I think it's a lot easier to come to a solution.
Yeah, and I think that's another thing. I think that's a great thing that I don't think that he said in the book, but establishing goals, like set goals and make plans. I think that is a great thing that you mentioned. And I think it's, as we are goal-oriented, it can make things so much easier to come up with those solutions. So I love that. That. That's really smart. That's one thing that I think I'll, in my next, I don't know, like, like, obviously, like, I'm not married, and so, like, I've been thinking a lot, when I read this book, I'm like, okay, how can I apply this with my family? How can I apply this with my family? And so, and I just, like, in the next time, I want to be like, okay, Mom, like, this is my goal, or Dad, like, this is my goal, and how can we negotiate how to get there with that, you know? So I love that. That's awesome. That's awesome. Yeah.
I think that's super powerful, too, to, like, be able to work on these skills in your family of origin, because I think a lot of us take for granted how forgiving our family of origins can be, right? And, I mean, I think sometimes the reason we say such a horrible thing to our sibling is because we just trust that they're going to forgive us. Yeah. Right? And they're like, I wouldn't say that to my friend, but I'll say it to my sibling because it's like, whatever. Like, but really, we should be treating them the best out of anybody else and practicing these communication skills that we want to employ in a marriage or with our own children one day within the relationships that already exist. Because something that my swim coach would always say is that, like, champions are made in the pool in practice. Like, if you can't swim this fast in practice, you're never going to be able to swim that fast in a race. Yeah. Like, you have to put the work in now if you want to be able to see that later in a different circumstance. Yeah. So I think that's super powerful to, whether our audience is married or single, I think that these principles are really awesome for everybody. Yeah. I agree, and I love how your swim coach said that it's made in the pool. It's made during practice, and I think that's just how, no matter whether it's on, especially let's put it in terms of dating, whether it's on a date, whether you're in a relationship, or whether you're married, like, putting these things into practice, like you said, like we've said before, like, it's gonna help. It's just going to help years in the future. And so starting the habit now is just going to be really, really healthy for everyone, you know? So I love that. That's awesome. So we've kind of talked a little bit about this, but specifically, who would you recommend the book to and why? I would recommend it to everyone. I would recommend it to everyone because so this is another thing is I read this book right after I got out of a relationship. And I'm not saying that this book, like, if I had done this, it would have
fixed everything and like I'd still be together. I'm not saying that, but I think it really, really helped me pinpoint where my weaknesses were and where I can grow. Because he also says, I think I'm the best communicator that I know, right? Like, but he's like, that's not the case. And he's like, at the end of the day, we're all bad at it in some way, shape, or form.
Yeah.
And so I also really, really recommend really taking to heart the apologies and forgiveness chapters of the book, because that helped me just let go of a lot of things. And I think I recommend it to everyone because it is just such a powerful thing, and it's very, very, he brings in scriptures, he brings in just even like real world examples of just research and stuff, and it really just helped me realize my weaknesses and where I can progress further, and next time, what can I do differently? My mission president would always say, because of what you've learned today, what are you going to do differently tomorrow? And I think that's why I recommend this book, is so what did I learn today, or like what I'm going through today is what I can do differently tomorrow.
I love that.
Yeah.
I'm excited to read those chapters you talked about, the forgiveness chapters. Okay, so I didn't prepare you for this question, but I just want to ask you, what does forgiveness mean? What do you think forgiveness means? Based off of like the chapter that in the book, based off of your own personal experiences, like,
I think forgiveness comes in 3 parts. One, it's really being honest with yourself and with the other person, and just kind of owning the actions, being really honest about the actions that happened and things that happened. And then forgiving the person and forgiving yourself. And you have to do that, for me, I have to do that with Jesus Christ and the atonement. And I feel like it means that he talks about how there's this Native American tradition where if 2 tribes were fighting and they were like, look, like, we don't want to do this anymore, he talks about the term bearing the hatchet. And he talks about how they would write the date on like the handle of the hatchet and they would bury it. But they wouldn't bury it in a place that they would forget about it. They buried it in a place that they knew. And so if there was a plate, and if there was ever a problem, if things came up again, one of them would undig it and say, hey, I'm not over this yet. We still need to talk about it. Now, I recognize that that's not possible all the time with certain things that we go through, right? Like, I'm not going to be, like, reaching back out to my ex and be like, hey, like, we still need to, like, talk, right? Like, no. But to me, he talks about writing letters, and the way that if you really can't talk to the person, he talks about writing letters. And just forgiveness is bearing the hatchet and giving that day to Jesus Christ and giving that day to him so that he can take over. And I think that's what forgiveness is I give it to Jesus Christ, and I'm going to continue doing my best because of what I've learned. And forgiving myself is the hardest part, but that's when the healing, that's when I've really felt it it's given to Christ, is when I've forgiven myself. I don't know if that answers the question, but...
Yeah, that's powerful.
Yeah.
Thank you for sharing that.
Yeah.
Well, you talked about a few different things you'd invite them to do, but let's summarize them really quick, and then if you have anything additional, you can, of course, add it. So one of them was the communication
Content communication. And focusing 100% on the words.
100% on the words.
100% on the words of what's being said.
Okay. And then, what was the other one that you said?
Negotiation and obligation to be happy. during conflict resolution. And I like how you said, have goals when you are. I think that's what I would invite them to do, is have goals when you're negotiating to try to come to a good solution. Yeah.
Love that.
Yeah. And then 3 is, especially in the things that hurt, especially the things that are painful to pray about, the things that are hard to talk about, give that to Jesus Christ, and think of a specific day, give that day to Jesus Christ, because it helps a lot. Even if you don't want to, give it to him. Yeah.
I love that.
Yeah.
Well, is there anything else you want to add before we wrap up, Emily?
No, I think, thank you for having me. This was awesome. And I just really, really think that reading this book has like changed my life. And I'm really excited to apply what I've learned. So, yeah.
Well, thank you so much. I really appreciate your preparation and your willingness to be vulnerable and to share what you've learned. And I think that this is really going to bless other people. It's definitely blessed me.
Okay, good.
And something that I just have been thinking a lot about is, like, honestly, if no one else ever listens to these podcasts, I don't really care. I just love doing them and having these conversations myself, and hopefully other people benefit from them, but I just want you to know that I have really benefited from this conversation, and I'm really grateful.
Good. I'm so glad. If you ever want to talk again, let me know.
Will do.
Yeah.
Alrighty, well, to our audience, thank you so much for joining us today on Buy the Book. We hope that you've enjoyed your time with us. The link to the book on Amazon will be in the show notes. Let us know in the comments if you end up reading the book and your main takeaways. Next week's podcast will be released on Tuesday at 7 a.m. Mountain Standard Time. And please share this episode with someone that you love. Follow us on Instagram at Buy the Book with Katie for updates and more information on these great books and our incredible guests. We'll see you next time.